Help me continue to welcome Susannah Fox.
My story is about what happens when you pay attention to the far reaches of your family tree, what can bloom. I grew up rich in cousins. I had first cousins, second cousins, cousins by marriage, cousins from different generations. Right in my family, I felt lost sometimes. I felt lost in the middle of the pack of all of these kids and cousins and aunts and uncles, and I longed for attention from elders. In my hometown, I had my grandmother's first cousin, Anne, and her husband, Mitsuru. They had no children and became like a third set of grandparents to me. Their very small home was filled with music and art and books and conversations about social justice, and was kind of a contrast to my own family's home. And I gravitated towards them very often as I was growing up. What I didn't know at the time was that Anne's parents, my great-great-aunt and uncle, were really serious art collectors. Anne and Mitsuru didn't tell many people, including me, that in their, frankly, two-bedroom, very small home, those works of art on the wall were originals by Mark Tobey, Georges Braque, Oskar Kokoschka, and one really beautiful painting of chrysanthemums by Marc Chagall. How was anyone to know that this was a painting by Marc Chagall? Anne and Mitsuru drove a beat-up Honda. They were math professors. They hardly ever locked their front door. They practiced security through obscurity. When Anne died, I became Mitsuru's person. I was his healthcare proxy, power of attorney, and co-executor of his estate. And it was my honor to care for him until the end of his life at age 87 from cancer. All the love that they had poured into me flowed out to Mitsuru in those final days in a full circle moment. And then the work of the estate began. Again, what we did not know is how we were going to handle all of the work of dividing the property and frankly, dealing with these works of art. Mitsuru, in his will, had designated all the money in his estate to be divided among organizations that helped people in need, especially refugees. He wanted the money to go to organizations that helped provide food and clean water. But also, he felt strongly about this. He wanted the money to go to some organizations that gave people access to beauty. He was inspired by his own adolescence in post-war Japan. He often told me about how he and his family only survived because of the food that was provided by relief organizations, but also because he had access to music and art, and that renewed his spirit. The other part of the estate was dealing with these artworks. What we were going to do to authenticate and document these artworks, we hired a fine art consultant who came in, and when she told me that we were going to have to take this painting by Marc Chagall to Paris, I laughed. But she wasn't kidding. It was the middle of the pandemic. It was 2020, and she was saying that we were going to have to travel to Paris. We hired a company to securely and carefully pack and ship the painting to Paris. And after many twists and turns, we traveled and met with Chagall's granddaughter, who was on the Comité Marc Chagall. And I'm happy to say that they did authenticate the work. And because it turns out that museums can't just take a family's word for it. So this painting had been created by Chagall in 1949. It was shortly after his return to France from New York, where he had fled as a refugee during World War II. Anne's parents had bought it for $450. Today, its worth is more in the range of $450,000. The museum accepted our gift, and my cousins, who took me into their hearts, created space for beauty in the world, created space for social justice, and so did Marc Chagall with the work that he did as a refugee in his paintings. I never told the museum Mitsu's story or how he divided his estate with those organizations, but the universe sings in harmony sometimes, and the full circle came together again when they debuted Chrysanthemums by Marc Chagall in a show featuring other artists who were refugees. And it was all about displacement and the longing that we all have to belong. And so I tell this story in honor of my cousins, Anne and Mitsu Yasuhara, to whom I belonged.
Susannah Fox.